WAYYY!
In the beginning, there was nothing. Well, actually, there was a lot. A diverse people happily inhabited the Americas before European explorers grew desperate for passage west to Asia. These native people were the first Americans, and each tribe was different. The only real similarity between these millions of people was their early inhabitants of North America. Remember those European explorers? The most notable of them is Christopher Columbus, who sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Most people associate Columbus with the beginning of both the shaping of United States culture and the start of the country itself. However, Columbus may not have really been the hero he is made out to be. While Columbus's voyages shaped world history, he also began what is known as the Columbian Exchange, a deadly initial exchange of cultures, commodities, and germs, which killed off most of those lovely native people we saw earlier. But they had horses now, so... England, America's mother country, didn't really have much interest in colonization until everyone else jumped on board the ships to the New World. Like the native people, the English were kind of dying off. Also, like the native people's decimation, it was kind of the English's fault. Anyways, when Britain hopped on the good old colonization and dehumanization of native peoples train, they had many successes as they granted charters to the first colonies, Jamestown and Plymouth, two of around 13 colonies that were established over the course of the next 100 or so years. While these people were mostly white Christian Europeans, they were all of different sects that inadvertently and collectively became a core part of American culture. The first of these is probably the Plymouth settlers, who were Protestant. Early Massachusetts settlers were Puritans. Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey were Quaker country. The suppression of non-Christian and even sometimes Quaker peoples continued, and there were few places for Catholic and Jewish Americans to integrate into regular society. They were constantly fleeing in search of the religious freedom we now pride ourselves on. Religion is ultimately a core part of American culture today. I mean, it's in God we trust, not like in our president we trust. Though I suppose that's for good reason. As time went on, the dehumanization of people became very common, notably black people. The colony's prime source of income came from plantations in the southern states, and many plantation owners wanted a cheap labor force. The slave trade became a reliable flow of sugar, rum, and human beings. This established a long tradition in American culture of treating African American people as if they were not human. After the 7 Years' War in the mid-1700s, Britain decided it would be a good idea to cement their claims on American territory. Also, they were kind of poor. So Britain began to enforce laws that the American colonists hated. As a result, Americans started to come together as Americans rather than British subjects, and most colonists no longer felt the need to be loyal to the British king. Thus, a new wholly American culture began to form. In the years directly leading up to the Revolution, many began to form new opinions on opposing sides, sort of like modern political parties. As you have likely noticed, there are a lot of American Girl dolls in this video, so let's just look at two of my official childhood icons to demonstrate. Felicity Merriman and Elizabeth Cole, whose story takes place in Williamsburg, Virginia, as the Revolutionary War was beginning. Felicity's family were patriots, for separation, and Elizabeth's were loyalists, who favored allegiance. Felicity and Elizabeth meet when they attend tea lessons. Felicity's father, a shopkeeper, stops selling and drinking tea after the Boston Tea Party, as he feels the tax on tea is wrong and he sympathizes with Bostonians. Felicity struggles to keep her friendship with Elizabeth throughout her stories because they are on opposing sides. It was hard to reason a friendship between loyalists and patriots, and families were often torn apart by their loyalties to one or the other. This separation between patriots and loyalists became a distinct part of culture during pre-revolutionary America. Despite the cries for freedom and equality, the Founding Fathers forgot, or should I say neglected, to make women part of this revolution. John Adams' wife, Abigail, a strong, intelligent, and absolutely a feminist of her time, wrote to her husband John as he worked on the Declaration with Thomas Jefferson and the rest of the gang, and said, "I long to hear that you have declared an independency. And by the way, in the new code of laws which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies, and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion, and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation." Basic equality for women, such as the right to vote and own property, like Abigail had hoped for, took over a century to achieve. Women were, like the natives and African Americans, dehumanized. Women were treated like a commodity, only useful for procreation and household duties. Regardless, they persisted in their fight. As the nation was blossoming into its own after the revolution was won, there were two major political opinions that divided the nation down the middle, almost like the patriots and the loyalists of the revolution, but worse. Alexander Hamilton was at the helm of one side, the Federalists, and Thomas Jefferson led the other, the Democratic Republicans. Both had completely different viewpoints over the Constitution and its interpretation. The Federalists believed that what the Constitution didn't specify, it allowed, but the Democratic Republicans felt that the Constitution's words were law, and anything else was unconstitutional. Thus, the Federalists supported a larger, more centralized governing system, and the Democratic Republicans wished for more power to the states. The founding of the Federalist and the Democratic Republican parties was the very beginning of the two-party system that is now nearly synonymous with United States politics and culture. The early years of United States history, from the Columbian explorers to the Treaty of Paris, is, of course, an integral part of modern American culture and society. As time went on, America's customs slowly shaped into what they are today. We became more and more progressive and more accepting of the ideals that we preached but did not practice. These first few colonial steps were only the beginning.
And it's just my soul responding to the heavy hearts I'm holding. And it's just my soul responding.